Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here today for the Spirit Anchor YouTube video series and the Anchor.fm podcast series. My name is Kristen Schmidt-Dykes. Today, we're excited to have Ethan Indigo Smith with us. He is an author, a Tai Chi practitioner, and he is also a spiritual advisor. Hi, Ethan. Thanks so much for joining us here today.
Peace. Thank you so much for having me. I'm always appreciative to be included, and I always look forward to communicating.
Well, great. So if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about who you are and your background for our listeners and viewers, that would be great.
Well, my life story is a bit like the American story. I grew up on a farm, and then I ended up in Manhattan, and then I ended up graduating high school in California. So I kind of have an eclectic mix of rural, urban, and Californian upbringing. I have been pursuing literary arts and martial arts for a number of years now. And of course, with that, I have an interest in meditation and spirituality in I think, a really grounded sense, maybe due to the Tai Chi influence. And yeah, I always enjoy kind of trying to influence consciousness in a beneficial manner, whether through satire or philosophy.
Well, that's great. I think that's really great. You have actually published and written a book called Geometry of Energy, How to Meditate. How did that book come about? And can you tell us a little bit about what's in that book?
Yeah, that book came about, actually was inspired with a conversation. A good friend was telling me about her meditation practice that had to do with Ezekiel. And in the biblical story of Ezekiel, there are four wheels within wheels, and the animal has four heads, and it's got a lot of astrological and energetic, subtle energy significance. But when she started recounting her practice, I realized that she was inferring what I sensed. She was inferring the four dimensions of geometry in her meditation practice.
Mm-hmm.
And it struck me. Some people might accuse me of being obsessed with the number four, but I like to say I have in-depth interest. But when she told me this, I immediately saw the relationship of the four dimensions of geometry, which are the points, lines, planes, and solids, or volume. And I explained that. She gave me this funny look, and the conversation moved on. But my thoughts dwelled on the relationship between just geometry in its simplest aspect, and of course beyond that, the subject of sacred geometry, exploring that in the relationship of meditation, and the connections or correlations with the four dimensions. And I found that many meditations had the concept really overtly built into the instruction of the practice, and others had it kind of subtly if you read into it. But for simplicity, the point represents concentration, and the line represents connection, and the plane, which is most typified in a circle, and the most efficient form of it is circular. The plane symbolizes circulation, and the solid or volume, I relate that to what I call unity expansion. And this is this, kind of, we feel this connection when we're in a decent mood, right? But we also can obtain this type of connection with ourselves, our surroundings, and others via meditation practice.
I wanted to ask the question of, isn't geometry, and especially sacred geometry and everything, because when I look at plants, or I look at anything in nature, I look at a snowflake, I look at different things in our environment and in our nature, it seems like that is also a part of geometry. Would that be a true statement?
I think the idea of sacred geometry is illustrated in nature and in our own bodies and in yoga and Tai Chi, for that matter. The eloquence behind the beauty that is that we see visually has a whole construct behind it, I like to think. And in its most simple terms, geometry we use to understand Earth, right? And so geometry literally means earth measuring. Mm-hmm. And so sacred geometry is actually a way to understand what is sacred, and that being spiritual, and that being intangible, right? So geometry is all about measuring the tangible. Meditation and sacred geometry, for that matter, are all about measuring. Of course, that would mean understanding the intangible, our inner world, and our spiritual connections, and the subtle energy that goes around, and so forth. So we can use sacred geometry to not only understand physical reality, but spiritual reality as well.
So you've also published a few more titles, including the Tao of, how do you say it, Thoth?
Thoth.
Thoth. Okay.
Well, I think Thoth is one of these gods that is so old, ancient, and mysterious that his name Thoth is another name for him that's not his original name anyway. So.
And what's the principle behind that book then?
Well, I found that there was a great way to unite humanity. I feel like not only today, but always, today it's a little bit exaggerated, the divisiveness of human construct, and often it's due to institutional influence, is really prevalent. And even to the point where this, in metaphysics, we have the division of Eastern and Western, right? Mm-hmm. And so, but where is the midpoint? Where does East begin and where does West continue, right? Where is the division? Well, there is none. And if you really look at history, like for instance, just the Silk Road, what they call the Silk Road, mm-hmm. which was the trading route from China to the East, to the Middle East, and to Europe, there was a lot of connections. And gods were one way that people shared who they were and what they're about. And so we see a lot of religions, most notably, or mostly people, the relationship of Jesus Christ within Babylon and Egyptian and many other belief systems that have just a slight skew or slight difference, but there is a shared storyline. And Thoth has this aspect too, in a really compelling manner that I found hadn't been explored as in depth as it could be. And Thoth is the Egyptian god of writing, and of spirituality and righteousness and wisdom and many things, geometry, sacred geometry. And he is said to be the builder of the Great Pyramid. And so that's legend, of course. But he is when he appears in Egyptian stories, he's not the main character. He's always essentially the advisor to the main character. And his partner, his feminine counterpart, is the kind of judge of righteousness and morality in when one proceeds to the afterlife. And so Thoth is, there are, in this book called the Kybalion, which I highly recommend, around the century, 100 years ago, it has 7 principles. And these 7 principles are, used commonplace nowadays in, the New Age groups and so forth. And not to say that they're not legitimate, but in legitimate metaphysical pursuits, beyond New Age type of thing, to put in quotes. And there are the 7 tenets of Thoth, or the 7 principles of the Kybalion, and there, I found that there is a suggested missing 8th element. And I was trying to find how these 7 met up with the Bagua, which is, this is the set of 8 elements in the East, in China, right? And these elements, typically one might know them as the trigrams that surround the yin yang, which in Chinese is actually called the Tai Chi, that contains yin and yang. And outside is the Bagua, and the Bagua just means set of 8. And Mark Passio, a great researcher and speaker, did a wonderful video where he reveals the 8th tenet, where he resources many different things, but including this book, the Kybalion, and its 7 tenets, and then he presents the 8th tenet. And when I saw his presentation, I realized the connection.
Okay.
Of the 8 tenets of natural law, or the 7 tenets of Kybalion, with the missing one on the Western schematic, and the Bagua with the East. And then I started researching Thoth, and I found that every Egyptian god has a city that was their main devotional center. And in Egypt, Hermopolis is the city of Thoth, right? And this is where the Greek god Hermes gets his. So Thoth is the original, Hermes is the derivative of Thoth. And that's why he's called Hermes, because the city of Thoth is Hermopolis. And when I found out what Hermopolis means, I realized the beautiful connection of the East and West through Thoth. And Hermopolis means the city of 8.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting how that all ties in. And
that's what I said.
Wow, that's
exactly what I said. And so even though the Kybalion, which is focused on the 7 tenets, is attributed to the teachings of Thoth, essentially, it has 7, not 8, right? And so when I found that, I got very excited. Of course, I said, wow, and started researching more. And then I found another beautiful relationship. The progenitor of all of China, the creator god, if you will, is Fuzi. And Fuzi, his feminine counterpart, forgive me, I'm forgetting her name right now, Nuwa. They are illustrated as, or depicted as, having a serpentine bottom half of their bodies, and they're intertwined, and they share, one of them holds a compass, and one of them holds a square. And so they're the divine geometers of humanity. And this is the Eastern uh, iteration of Thoth, right? So Hermes is the Greek iteration. Fuzi is the Chinese iteration of Thoth. And so I started putting together 8 fundamental mannerisms that one can embody. For this is if the Kybalion is lacking at all, it's lacking with uh, pointing to how we can embody the lessons. And that's what Tai Chi is all about, right? Even though the philosophy and the scholarly concepts within Tai Chi are quite magnificent and broad, it's more about being in the body, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas the Western conceptualization through the Kybalion and so forth is more mental, right? And so when you bring these things together, like with Tai Chi in and of itself, you can, I don't want to say trigger, but you can instigate the body to be in a better place so that you can change your mind and your spirit. Because it's really hard. Like, there's all kinds of great information out there, but to change your mind on information is practically impossible, right? It takes a long time, actually. Or it's not practically impossible. It takes some time. To change your emotive with your body, it's like that. I can see, and better healers than I can make it happen, in one little session, right? And I can see it unfold when people practice just for half an hour, right? You can see their structure change through their physical, which influences their mental and their emotive. So going from physical to mental to emotion is the best way to change our being. Going from the mental to the physical to the emotive, it's much more difficult.
So for the people, though, that don't know about Tai Chi, and you are a Tai Chi practitioner, can you explain a little bit about that practice? Obviously, it's a very old Eastern practice that, from what I understand, is energy movement. Would that be a correct assumption?
Yes. I have not found anything that Tai Chi does not relate to and help. It's the most integrative art I have encountered. I've explored yoga and other martial arts and so forth. Tai Chi is all about integration. I like to ask people when they first take a class with me, why do you want to learn Tai Chi? And often it's because they want to heal or they want to be less stressed. And all these things come about. When we just relax, so many things are possible. And so Tai Chi, I mentioned earlier, Tai Chi, the meaning of Tai Chi is what we call the yin-yang symbol, right? So Tai Chi Chuan means the grand ultimate body movement, or long fist, long form. But it is essentially the grand ultimate way to become your better self. Not become like your teacher, not become like a Chinese guy from 5,000 years ago. Become your better, more relaxed, more natural self, which enables you to do these things that we want to do in life. Whether it's really simple, I want to not be stressed out by this person, or I want to walk across the street and not have my hip hurt, or something really subtle and hard to even explain, like how do I detect someone's subtle energy, right? And so all these things can come about when we relax. There's kind of two different mindsets immediately in Tai Chi: practicing and learning, right? So when we learn, it's a brain fry, I like to call it. It's palatable confusion. To move three limbs in a coordinated manner while balancing on one, it's not easy. and then do it slowly, add structured relaxation. It's not easy, and literally people just can't handle it after an hour. And me too. Eventually learning becomes overwhelming. You have to, okay, that's enough for today, right? Practicing is a whole different mindset. Both of them have, both practice and learning have vast benefits, right? And there's this notion that if a person is retired, they should start learning a language or something, right? You want to keep learning because that puts you in a place where there's no end. We were talking earlier before the interview. What's your level of practice of your Tai Chi? I'm still learning, and that's the reason there are no belts in Tai Chi is because it's endless. We never perfect it. We always strive for more perfection, more refinement, and so if we reach this level of professional, right? When people graduate college, they're done, right? And then they're a professional, and then they get into this mode where they start actually to regress. And so Tai Chi always has these beneficial aspects built into it, in that sense that it's not ending, it's continuous learning and practice, and kind of fusing those two active and passive mind states together to really.
It's a very mindful practice. To me, it is a very dedicated, mindful practice. But before we go, Ethan is going to leave us with a meditation, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I just wanted to thank you, Ethan, for your time. And I wanted to thank our listeners for tuning in to our interview with Ethan Indigo Smith. So Ethan, I'll let you go ahead and take us out with a wonderful meditation.
Let me share two, because one is really easy to put in your pocket, and it's super simple. And then we'll practice the one, which is easy in the most difficult terms. So there's so many different ways to meditate. Sometimes the simplest is the most powerful. And actually, the phrase Wu Wei is a Chinese idea where in simplicity is the most power and the most graceful beauty, right? When we make things too complicated, it kind of gets a little messy. I also wrote a book about the number 108. And 108 is a commonly known number. There's a lot to it. But it's one of the most interesting and complicated numbers, but it also holds in it the simplest meditation instruction. Be one with the breath, let zero thoughts coalesce, and tap into the infinite. 108. Be one with the breath, let zero thoughts coalesce, tap in. Right? So with that, that's just a great way to let the stressful waters roll off you like a duck. 108. Just go back to that mode when you're in traffic or whether you're listening to a politician or whatever. So I try to be funny too. But this next practice is I'll try to make it so I'm visible entirely. The this is Wu Chi, or universal pillar, or hug a tree. And a lot of meditation practitioners, actually with the number 4, there is 4 physical manners to be in meditation: lying, sitting, standing, and walking. Standing is one that meditators don't get into as much. It's really difficult. But it's really rewarding also, because we are compelled to deal with gravity, and to really be internal in a metaphysical and physical sense, to notice how we're dealing with reality, and how we could be a little bit softer and a little bit more coordinated as it concerns dealing with gravity, the thing we never get away from. It's called the universal pillar. Essentially, it's so simple that you just do this. Okay? But just have a couple of concepts in mind, that you want to have your head over your neck on your shoulders over your waist. Exactly, yes. A little bit. We can find structured softness, right? And in this posture, we're looking for structured softness. Our shoulders over our torso on our legs. Our one Tai Chi trick in life: when I look down, I want to make sure I can see my toes beyond my knees. Whether I'm moving a refrigerator or meditating in this posture or whatever, I want to give my knees ease, right? And so I have my weight on my biggest muscles, my thighs. My knees are relaxed over my feet, and I breathe. And this is Zazen. This is Zen meditation, brought to China from India by Bodhidharma. Relax the elbows in Tai Chi and in life. If we always set ourselves at about 70%, then we have 30% more to go. So elbows unlocked, everything unlocked, and with an attention rate at about 70, right? 70%, right? Because I don't want to not be attentive, but I want to really relax. And my hands are at about heart level, and I've noticed this is one of the best postures to practice visualization. What am I going to accomplish, and how am I going to accomplish it? How am I going to take that turn? How am I going to maneuver through this situation today? This is the best posture to practice visualization, and yet it's also a great one to really just nothing. Tongue on the roof of the mouth, and just breathe. And as things are going on, when you're dealing with gravity, you can, whatever it is, just open up and get back right to it, right? So there's no set requirement to be here. It's about being in that 70% mode. If I'm here for 30 minutes or an hour, okay, I'm now past 70% for me, right? And if it's your first time, 5 minutes, okay, yeah, I don't need to blow a circuit here, right? So that meditation is so simple. Both those meditation concepts are so simple, but so profoundly rewarding. And it's all about you, right? I see a lot of gurus, if you will. There's this whole notion of the fake spiritual advisors and so on. Tai Chi And I like to say, it's about, can I help you help yourself? Right? I don't want to have to do everything for you, but here, let me show you the universal pillar meditation. And if you practice it, you'll probably surprise yourself, right?
That's great. It
So
seemed
it's
it felt very strong. So I'll be excited to try it, and hopefully our listeners will too.
cool.
So.
Wonderful. Well, I so appreciate you coming.
I really appreciate your time, Ethan. It's been really interesting to learn about you and learn about your background and your publications. And we'll make sure that everybody can, follow you on your website. And I will list. Are you on? Yep, you're on Facebook.
I'm on the usual. I'm on the usual.
Okay, I'll make sure that we list that. So thanks, Ethan.
Cool.
We really appreciate your time, and thanks to everybody for listening and tuning in. And we'll see you next time. Have a great day.
On Earth.